let's look at some of the areas where Kamala Harris has changed her mind. Legalization of cannabis. She used to be against it. She now came out with the most left-leaning position any major party candidate has taken, which is she wants it legalized. Oh, but she flip-flopped. She changed her mind. Well, she came around to the right view as public opinion and research on cannabis evolved.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's no conflict. With Trump, a lot of this stuff feels nakedly and brazenly opportunistic.
What's happening, everybody? David Pakman was recently a guest on a podcast called The Digital Social Hour with host Sean Kelly. David Pakman and Sean Kelly discussed a variety of topics, including the southern border and abortion. That said, let's watch David Pakman humiliate himself by telling half-truths and full-blown lies to try and make himself appear intelligent. Let's go.
But there's a degree to which Trump is willing to completely sacrifice what he genuinely believes. I'll give you another example. Trump's been pro-choice his entire life on the issue of abortion. Melania Trump recently in an interview said, I'm pro-choice. Trump contrived and fabricated this anti-abortion view because he said to himself correctly, I'm going to run as a Republican. One of the big fundraising issues for Republicans is that you've got to be against abortion. He started speaking at the Right to Life March or the March for Life or whatever it's called. Nobody who's around Trump believes for a second that he genuinely changed his view on abortion at age 68. And when you ask him why he changed his view, the story is, well, I was pro-choice my whole life. His wife's pro-choice, his family's pro-choice. But then I met a kid who I liked, and the kid's mom said, I thought about getting an abortion, but I didn't. And Trump wants us to believe that that made him completely against abortion. All of this stuff is far more nakedly political, whereas let's look at some of the areas where Kamala Harris has changed her mind. Legalization of cannabis. She used to be against it. She now came out with the most left-leaning position any major party candidate has taken, which is she wants it legalized. Oh, but she flip-flopped. She changed her mind. Well, she came around to the right view as public opinion and research on cannabis evolved.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's no conflict. With Trump, a lot of this stuff feels nakedly and brazenly opportunistic.
Makes sense to me. Now, this is the big one. I'd love to hear your opinion on this one, the border policy.
Okay.
Who do you think's got the better border policy between those two?
Well, the important thing to understand is that Trump's border policy isn't completely clear. I mean, I'll tell you the parts that are clear. He wants to build a wall across the entire U.S.-Mexico border, which you can't actually do. You can only do it in certain parts because there's other types of barriers, including water.
Like and subscribe.
And different things. I don't think Trump knows. I don't think Trump cares. But he says we're going to build a wall across the entire thing. And maybe Mexico will pay for it. That was part of it in 2016. He failed to do it. You can't do it in a presidential term. You're not going to get Mexico to pay for it. And it's not really going to deal with the broader issue, which is people that are flying in and overstaying visas, people being smuggled in or coming in legally and staying through legal ports of entry, et cetera. So he wants to build this wall. He's not going to build the wall, and it wouldn't actually solve the problem. Trump wants to do militarized mass deportations. When he's asked who would be included in that, sometimes he'll say, well, the criminal illegal aliens who have committed violent crimes. Okay, we already do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to serve time here first, then they get deported. We already have that in place. So then you asked Trump, well, what about those who came here as minors because they were brought by their parents before they legally had any say? Someone came here when they were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now they're 20. They have no connection to their birth country. They speak English. They've gone to college here, et cetera. You're going to deport them? Not a clear answer. That's a real problem for me. The answer should be clear. We're not going to deport them. Of course not. Trump's asked, what about, mothers? Will mothers be separated from their babies and put into these militarized deportation camps? Trump says, that's a tough one because I'll get bad press if I do that. Rather than saying, of course we're not going to do that. Of course we're not going to do that. So my view on this is I am not for an open border. I don't believe we have one. I think countries have a right to enforce their borders. If people are here illegally and they don't have any legal status, they're subject to deportation. That it's the name of the game.
Do you agree with that?
With people who are here illegally being deported?
Yeah.
As a general principle, that's absolutely the way every country functions. I also think We have a bunch of industries that, thanks to
First of all, let me know what you think, but I don't think Trump's anti-abortion. He hasn't ever stripped anyone of their rights with regards to abortion. The Supreme Court sent it back to the states where it belongs, but I mean, he's made it very clear that if a bill for a national abortion ban came across his desk, he wouldn't sign it. So, however, David Pakman's theory about Donald Trump changing his mind on abortion is a possibility. And it's important for me to say that because I call out the left all the time for flip-flopping. However, could it be that since he's interacted with more and more folks that are passionate about not killing babies, he views it differently now? Is that a possibility? Or maybe that conversation he had with a mother who said, I was going to have an abortion, but I'm so glad I didn't. That could have been one of many instances that collectively made him rethink his position. Now, I personally don't even think it's outside the realm of possibility that one conversation did make him see things in a different light. But of course, that's unfathomable to David Pakman because he doesn't think killing babies is all that big of a deal. But him comparing Donald Trump's flip-flopping on one issue versus Kamala's flip-flopping on every single issue, multiple times throughout her career, by the way, it's just not even apples to apples comparison. It's apples to Band-Aids. I don't know. She wasn't just against cannabis before. She prided herself on locking up folks for low-level drug offenses as the DA of San Francisco. She loved the power because at that time, she believed that's what people expected of her. But see, David, you gave one example of Donald Trump potentially pandering to his base. But what you left out is Kamala Harris literally changed overnight everything she ever believed when she ran in 2016 when she became the Democrat nominee in 2024. And by the way, that wasn't the first time she'd done that in her career. It goes all the way back. It goes back to what I always say. Democrat politicians will do or say whatever they feel at that moment in time will help them reach their penultimate goal, which is accumulating as much power as possible, period.
big agriculture and, for other reasons, industries that are dependent on migrant labor. I've not heard Trump articulate, if you deport all those folks they're just here working. Yes, they're here illegally, but they've committed no other crime and they're just here working. What do you do about those industries that would collapse? I haven't heard an answer to that. When it comes to what we call DACA, I think we need to give some path to, at minimum, permanent residency, if not citizenship, to those who came here as minors through no fault of their own. They're contributing here. They're essentially American in every sense of the word. So we've got to figure that out. So I don't think there's any, you agree with this or you agree with that. I think this is a complicated issue. And I say this as an immigrant to the United States who came here legally.
Yeah. Yes, my parents did too. When you see these crazy numbers, though, like they're saying 20 million illegals came in the past, 4 years, 8 years? Did you see that?
I've not seen any proof of that number. I think the thing about this is I don't want to play games about what the real number is. That number is not a number that I've seen anywhere reliable in terms of from Border Patrol or INS or whatever. I don't know that the number is really going to get us to the right policy. I mean, people have come into the U.S. illegally while Biden has been president, while Trump has been president, while Obama was president, while Bush was president. It's a country of 340 million people. People enter the country illegally. There are different circumstances. What I don't want to see is this to become a thing where immigrants start being targeted and scapegoated, the way we've seen, for example, with the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, who you might not like the policy, but they are here with temporary protected status. Some people are saying that shouldn't exist. Okay, we'll go lobby and change it. But right now they have temporary protected status. I don't want to see people start to be scapegoated and that sort of thing. But of course, countries have a right to enforce their borders.
Absolutely. Any other policies come to mind?
I mean, you can bring up any that you want.
So the illegal immigration problem is mainly about people overstaying their visas. It has nothing to do with everyone and their brother claiming asylum status and being let in with little to no vetting. Oh, I didn't know that. At least I learned something from David on this one. These mass deportations, David, you do realize it's just cleaning up Joe Biden's mess. So instead of mass deportations, we might want to call it enforcing laws that are on the books that the Biden administration didn't enforce. You don't think we have an open border? 10 to 20 million people coming into the country? Again, you make a great point. That sounds like a pretty closed border to me. I'm really, really getting sick of this argument. What about these jobs that no one wants to do, that pick fruit and janitorial services or housekeepers? Why does no one point out that that is so patronizing and insulting to illegal immigrants? The virtue signaling party, that's what they think of them. That's all they think they really do. And as far as businesses that rely solely on cheap labor from illegal immigrants and they stand to be hurt by deportations, let me know what you think of this take. And let me know if I'm right or wrong, or you'd like to add something to it. I'd really be interested. If you're relying on cheap illegal immigrant labor to run a business, should you have really be running in the first place? If they're a legitimate business, then they'll have to realize that with these deportations, they'll have to let the market dictate how much they need to pay their employees. And this is something that no one else on all the stuff I watch ever pushes back on. People keep saying that these are jobs that Americans won't do. Why doesn't anyone ever push back and say, well, if the jobs pay what the market dictates, I guarantee their offices will be flooded with resumes from American workers. Money talks, baby. It's a stupid argument. Last thing on immigration, David says it about once every 1.5 interviews or so that he's an immigrant that came here legally. Do any of these virtue signalers give a shit about legal immigrants that waited their turn and came in the right way? Isn't all of this a slap in the face to them? So a show like this, Digital Social Hour, I haven't seen it before, but the host seems like a good host. But this is the kind of show where David Pakman can thrive because he knows that a podcast host in this space who doesn't solely focus on politics, and again, I am not disparaging the host at all, he probably doesn't know as much as David does about these matters. So the host is assuming that David Pakman is a normal person, which huge mistake, but a normal person that tells the truth and doesn't manipulate the truth to make his case. My point being that between the fact that the host probably says, hey, David knows a lot about politics, I'll listen like a good interviewer does, unlike David, and the host goes into the interview assuming that he's just going to get honest answers, he's not going to push back on David. Whereas when David's speaking with someone that does this for a living, they anticipate all of his moves before he even does them, and they know what to push back on because they're as educated, if not probably more, than David is. On a show like this, David can say or do whatever he wants with the knowledge that it's pretty likely that this guy isn't going to push back on his bull. But what did you think about this conversation between David Pakman and Sean Kelly? Do you think, like I do, that he exposed himself as a giant fool like he typically does? Or do you think he did a great job? But actually, more importantly, is a question I've been dying to ask, and I really hope you'll take a second to comment on it. Here's the question. When's the last time you think David Pakman went to the gym? Let me know. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you like watching leftists just talk out of their ass for, 10 to 15 minutes, then click on one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. Otherwise, as always, you guys are the best. I appreciate you more than you know. And thank you so much for watching. The end.